For 6 straight hours she sat in the middle seat like she didn't even exist, no phone, no chatter, no nerves, just a worn paperback and a face that gave nothing away. Then the aircraft started to die, not the normal bumps people laugh off, but a deep shudder that felt like the sky itself had grabbed the fuselage and twisted it. Overhead bins rattled, a baby screamed, someone's drink lifted off the tray like gravity blinked. Still she didn't flinch. She just lifted her head slowly, like she'd been waiting for this exact moment, and when the cabin lights flickered and the engines changed tone, she finally spoke, one quiet sentence, just 2 words. A call sign. A call sign that was not supposed to exist anymore, a name that had been buried months ago with military honors and a closed casket, a name no civilian should even know. Up in the cold thin air beside the struggling airliner, 2 escort fighters were already sliding into formation, sleek and fast, trained to handle emergencies without emotion.
Ma'am, you too, fasten it. Yes, sorry.
But the second that call sign hit the radio, both pilots froze in their cockpits. One of them actually stopped talking mid-sentence. Because they recognized it. And if that voice truly belonged to the person that name belonged to, then this wasn't a random mechanical failure. It was a message. It was a hunt. And everyone on that plane had just become part of something much bigger than a bad flight. So before we jump into the full story, comment below where you're watching from, and if you want more intense real-life style stories like this, hit subscribe and stay with me. The whole terminal felt like Monday even though it wasn't, stale air, tired faces, and that sharp smell of burnt espresso drifting out of a kiosk that never seemed to close. Flight 731 to the East Coast was posted as on time, which made people suspicious instead of relieved, like the screen was lying to them. Passengers funneled toward the gate in that familiar airport rhythm, shuffle, stop, shuffle again, dragging carry-ons that clicked over every crack in the floor, couples arguing in whispers, solo travelers staring through people like ghosts. And then she appeared in the line like she belonged there and also didn't. Late 30s, average height, nothing flashy, dark denim, a plain jacket, beat-up sneakers, hair tied back in a practical ponytail, no necklace, no rings, no bright bag, just a faded backpack that looked like it had been through too many miles. In one hand she held a paperback with a creased spine, the kind of book you buy at a gas station when you don't want anyone to talk to you. When she reached the counter, the agent scanned her pass without really seeing her. Seat 24E, middle seat, the seat that feels like a punishment.
Sir, seatbelt on now!
Sigh,
okay, doing it. Ma'am, you too, fasten it.
Do the
yes,
little.
Sorry.
Is there
Seatbelts,
anything
everyone,
else
now!
Smile people do when they want a favor? She simply nodded and walked down the jet bridge like she had nowhere else to be.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a
Inside
situation.
the plane, the cabin was already alive with small annoyances, overhead bins slamming, someone searching for a lost earbud, a kid whining about a tablet that wouldn't connect. She moved down the aisle with her head slightly lowered, not rushing, not hesitating. No eye contact, no small talk, just quiet steps and a calm that didn't match the chaos around her. Row 24 was crowded, a young couple was in the window and aisle seats, half watching a movie, half bickering about snacks. When she stopped beside them, the guy in the aisle seat blinked like he'd forgotten other humans existed. "Oh, sorry," he muttered, stepping out. She slipped in without touching anyone, without bumping knees, without apologizing. She sat down, clicked her belt, placed the backpack under the seat, opened the book to a dog-eared page, and disappeared into it. No fidgeting with the air vent, no checking the seat pocket, no dramatic look out the window. Just stillness, like the world could spin and she'd remain the same. As the plane filled up and the crew went through the safety routine with their practiced smiles, she didn't look up once. When the engine started and the aircraft rolled away from the gate, she kept reading. When the wheels left the runway and the city lights sank beneath the clouds, she turned another page, calm as if she'd done this 1,000 times. To every person around her, she was just another tired traveler in a forgettable seat. A woman you'd never remember if someone asked you later. The kind of passenger flight attendants love because she asks for nothing,
seatbelt on
needs
now.
nothing,
Okay,
and
doing
takes
it.
up
Ma'am,
no
you too,
space at
fasten
all.
it. Yes, sorry.
If
Seatbelts,
you looked
everyone
at her
now.
boarding pass, the name on it sounded normal enough. Not famous, not suspicious, not memorable,
Ladies
just
and
the kind
gentlemen,
of
we have a
name you'd scroll
situation.
past without
Please
stopping.
remain calm and follow
that
my
was the point.
instructions carefully.
Because the identity she carried was built to be boring. A driver's license, a clean credit history, a quiet little online trail with harmless photos and safe posts, coffee cups, sunsets, a random quote about new beginnings, the kind of digital footprint that exists only to prove you exist. But the woman sitting in seat 24E wasn't that person, not even close. Her real name had been erased from every place it once mattered. 8 months earlier, it had been printed on a thick folder stamped with warnings and signatures. Then it disappeared behind locked doors and conversations that happened in rooms without windows. Officially, she had died in the desert. A training accident, that's what the paperwork said, clean and neat and final. A routine exercise, a sudden failure, nothing anyone needed to dig into. The kind of story that ends questions before they start. There had been a funeral, too. Not a public one, not the kind where neighbors bring casseroles and old friends cry into their sleeves. This one was quiet, precise, controlled. A closed casket, a military cemetery, a handful of people standing in perfect lines, faces like stone. Someone high-ranking had been there, the kind of person who didn't attend funerals unless they had to. He watched the casket go down, lifted his hand in a final salute, and then signed the last page that made her officially gone. The final page that told the world, do
Sir,
not
seatbelt
ask,
on
do
now.
not search,
Okay, doing
do
it.
not
Ma'am,
follow
you too,
this.
fasten it. Yes, sorry.
12 people
Seatbelts, everyone,
attended,
now!
maybe fewer. Most of them couldn't even tell their own families where they had been that day. They went back to
Ladies
their
and
lives
gentlemen, we have
carrying
a
a secret they were
situation.
trained to keep.
Please remain calm
And the world
follow my
moved on.
instructions carefully.
Except the casket had been empty. The woman they buried wasn't inside it. She was alive, breathing recycled cabin air, listening to an airliner climb into the upper sky. She had simply been given a new skin to wear, a new name to answer to, and one clear rule. Stay invisible. For months she did exactly that. She went nowhere that mattered, said little, lived small. The kind of quiet life that feels like safety until you realize it's also a cage. And now she was back in the air, in a middle seat, with a paperback open. Looking like nothing. While carrying the kind of past that could bend entire agencies into motion with one single word. For the first few hours, the flight was the kind nobody remembers. A steady hum, dim cabin lights, soft snoring, the glow of screens bouncing off tired faces. The crew moved up and down the aisle with easy smiles and practiced hands, offering drinks, clearing trash, making small talk that didn't mean anything. Most passengers were predictable. The guy in business class already on his second drink. A mom in the middle rows collecting crumbs like it was her job. A teenager tucked behind headphones like a shield. And then there was her, still in 24E, still quiet, still reading. The crew barely noticed her because she gave them nothing to notice. She accepted a small cup of juice, drank half,
Sir,
set it down,
seatbelt on now!
went right back
Okay,
to the
doing
book.
Ma'am, you too, fasten
But
it.
she
Yes,
wasn't
sorry.
reading the way
Seatbelts,
normal
everyone,
people
now!
read. When her eyes lowered to the page, her ears stayed open. When her head leaned back like she was
Ladies and
resting,
gentlemen, we have a
her body
situation.
stayed ready.
Please remain calm
Because she
and
wasn't
follow my
sleeping,
instructions
she was
carefully.
listening. To most people, an airplane is one sound. To her, it was hundreds. Little clicks and whines and pulses that repeated in patterns. The flap motors shifting, the pressurization cycling, the gentle change in pitch when the autopilot corrected its course. A machine with a heartbeat. And she knew that heartbeat. She had learned it the hard way, through training that bruised you into competence. She could recognize almost every normal sound a jet makes at cruising altitude. And she also knew the sounds that show up when things start to break. 4 hours in, a new vibration ran through her seat for just a moment. 2 seconds, light enough that most people would blame it on turbulence and forget it instantly. But she didn't forget. Her eyes opened. She closed the paperback without marking the page, resting both hands on it like it was a lid she didn't want to lift yet. Then she counted in her head, steady and patient, measuring the space between danger and denial. The vibration returned. This time it lasted longer, deeper, like something inside the aircraft had shifted out of alignment. She didn't move fast, she didn't panic. She just adjusted her posture, feet flat, weight forward, the way a person shifts when they might need to stand quickly. Up front, a small amber warning blinked on a cockpit screen. Nothing dramatic, not yet. Engine readings twitching, oil pressure doing something
Sir,
it shouldn't.
seatbelt on now.
Okay,
The
doing
captain
it.
Ma'am, you
glanced
too,
at it and
fasten it.
frowned,
Yes, sorry.
and the first
Seatbelts,
officer
everyone,
leaned in
now.
closer. They said the words pilots say when they want to sound calm, probably a sensor, log it, keep
Ladies
watching.
and gentlemen, we have a situation.
But the woman in 24E
Please remain
already
calm
knew it
and
wasn't
follow
just
my
a sensor.
instructions carefully.
Because the airframe was telling her the truth through the floor. She stood up like she was headed to the restroom, unhurried. The aisle seat guy beside her barely looked up. His movie kept playing, his world still pretending it was normal. She walked toward the rear, but her eyes weren't on the occupied signs or the snack cart. They were scanning. Overwing exits, rear exits, oxygen mask panels, the spacing between rows, the way overhead bins were latched. The little details you only care about when you're planning for impact. Near the back galley, a flight attendant was chatting with a passenger about points and upgrades. He didn't notice her pause by the intercom panel for half a second too long. Not long enough to be obvious. Just long enough to memorize which button reached the cockpit, and which button triggered alerts. Then she slipped into the lavatory and locked the door. In the mirror, the face looking back at her was forgettable on purpose. Plain hair, plain expression, the kind of woman who could walk past you in an airport and leave no trace in your memory. She placed 2 fingers against the thin wall and felt it. That same vibration, faint but alive, traveling through the structure. Her mind ran through causes. Loose fittings, cracked brackets, a control surface actuator starting to fail. And then her instincts dragged up an older memory, a darker one. A man she'd stopped years ago who
Sir,
talked about
seatbelt on
making
now.
accidents
Okay,
look
doing
natural.
Ma'am, you too, fasten it.
Not by
Yes,
blowing
sorry.
a plane
Seatbelts,
apart,
everyone,
but by
now.
teaching it to destroy itself through resonant stress. Tiny charges placed where the airframe liked to sing, triggered
Ladies
at
and gentlemen,
altitude,
we have a
disguised as
situation.
mechanical
Please
failure.
remain calm and
She
follow my
exhaled
instructions
slowly.
carefully.
Flushed the toilet she hadn't used, because that's what normal passengers do. Then walked back to her seat, calm as if nothing had happened. The aisle seat guy blinked at her like she'd interrupted his scream. "You okay?" he asked, not really caring. "Fine," she said softly, her first word in hours. But she didn't open the book again. She held it closed and listened harder. Now she was counting distance, time, altitude, and how quickly a problem like this could turn fatal. And up in the cockpit, the captain's frown deepened. Because the single warning had become 2, then 3. Hydraulic readings drifting the wrong way, not fast enough to scream yet, but ST. It happened so suddenly that nobody even had time to grab their fear before it grabbed them. 1 second the cabin was half asleep, the next the entire aircraft jolted like it had been punched from underneath. Not a gentle bump, not that normal air pocket dip people joke about. This was violent, metal on metal, a harsh grinding vibration that traveled through the floor and up into everyone's bones. Overhead bins rattled like they were about to burst open. A laptop slid off a tray table and cracked on the aisle. Somebody screamed without even knowing why. Then the plane dropped. Not a little dip. A real drop, a stomach-lifting free fall that made everybody on board remember they were sitting inside a machine hanging
Sir,
miles above
seatbelt
the
on
earth.
now.
Okay, doing it.
People
Ma'am, you too,
grabbed
fasten it.
armrests.
Yes, sorry.
Strangers
Seatbelts,
grabbed
everyone,
strangers.
now.
A child started crying like a siren. A man spilled his drink all over himself and didn't
Ladies
even
and gentlemen,
react.
we have a situation.
In seat
Please remain
24E,
calm
she
and
didn't
follow my
scream.
instructions
Her
carefully.
hands locked onto the armrests and she counted in her head like a metronome. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Waiting for the moment the aircraft decided whether it wanted to keep living. The jet caught itself with a roaring correction, but the recovery felt wrong. Too heavy, too delayed, like the plane was trying to move through thick mud. And then it jerked sideways, a hard yaw that shoved the cabin to one side. More screaming, more panic. The seatbelt sign slammed on with an urgent chime that didn't sound friendly anymore. And right after it, the captain's voice came over the speakers, calm on the surface, stripped of comfort underneath. Ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing technical difficulties. I need everyone seated with your seatbelts fastened immediately. Cabin crew secure the cabin. Technical difficulties. The words people use when the truth is too sharp to say out loud. Flight attendants stopped pretending. Trash carts were abandoned, cups left on armrests, smiles gone. They moved fast toward their jump seats, faces tight, eyes scanning for anything about to become a flying object. The young guy beside her, the one who'd been watching a superhero movie, stared at her like she might have answers. "What is happening?" he whispered, voice thin. She didn't look at him at first. She listened to the engines, to the airframe, to the way the aircraft was struggling to obey its own controls. Then she
Sir,
said it,
seatbelt on
quiet
now.
and flat,
Okay, doing
like
it.
she was
Ma'am, you
naming
too,
the weather.
fasten it. Yes, sorry. Seatbelts,
Hydraulics are
everyone,
failing.
now!
He blinked hard. How do you know that? The systems that move the plane are losing
Ladies and
pressure,
gentlemen, we
she
have a
said.
situation.
The pilots are fighting
Please
it,
remain
but it's
calm
getting
and
worse.
follow my instructions
Another
carefully.
shudder rolled through the cabin. Not as violent as the first, but enough to make people cry out again. Enough to make everyone realize this wasn't one bad moment, it was a chain. Up front, the cockpit had turned into a wall of warnings. Amber lights stacked, then more. Hydraulic pressure drifting down, then drifting faster. The first officer called out readings with a steady voice that didn't match her pulse. The captain stared at the instruments and felt that cold gut instinct pilots learn to respect. Because now it wasn't one system acting strange. It was multiple systems leaning the same wrong direction. He reached for the radio, trying to stay ahead of the problem. Asking air traffic control for options, talking about a precautionary diversion. Trying to sound like this was still under control. And then the aircraft hit another ugly jolt. A deep mechanical groan like something inside had finally cracked. The kind of sound that does not belong in the sky. The captain didn't hesitate anymore. The calm voice became a hard one. They started dumping fuel to get lighter. They declared an emergency. They asked for direct routing to the nearest serious runway. And just when it felt like the situation couldn't stack any higher, it did. A new alarm screamed through the cockpit, sharper, louder, the kind that makes your blood turn to ice. Engine 2 fire warning. The first
Sir,
officer's
seatbelt
voice
on
tightened
now.
for the
Okay,
first time.
doing it.
Ma'am, you too, fasten
Fire
it. Yes,
warning.
sorry.
Engine
Seatbelts,
2.
everyone, now!
Training took over. Fuel cut, handle pulled, extinguisher discharged. They
Ladies and
waited
gentlemen,
through
we have a
seconds that felt like
situation.
minutes,
Please
eyes locked
remain
on the
calm
warning
and
light.
follow my instructions
It stayed
carefully.
on. The captain's jaw clenched. Second extinguisher. Another discharge, another wait, another silent prayer disguised as procedure. Finally, the warning went dark. But the engine was finished, shut down, dead weight on the wing. One engine gone, hydraulics degraded, and they were still not on the ground. In the cabin, fear stopped sounding like screaming and started sounding like silence. The kind of silence you hear when people begin to understand they might not be going home the way they planned. And in seat 24E, the woman who had been invisible all night made a decision. Because she could feel the aircraft getting sicker by the minute. And she knew the next part would be the part where people either get saved, or get remembered. The cabin changed after the fire alarm. It wasn't loud anymore, it was heavy. Like everyone was holding the same breath, afraid that if they exhaled, the plane would fall with it. A woman a few rows ahead started whispering prayers under her breath, soft and shaking. Someone near the front kept typing on a phone with trembling thumbs, trying to send messages before the signal disappeared. A little boy cried into his mother's chest while she rocked him and forced her face to look brave, even though her eyes were wet. And in the middle of all that, the quiet woman in 24E unclicked her seatbelt. A flight attendant near the back called out from his jump seat, voice strained but trying to stay professional. "Ma'am, you need to stay
Sir,
seated."
seatbelt on now!
Okay,
She
doing
didn't
it.
argue.
Ma'am, you too,
She
fasten
didn't
it.
apologize.
Yes, sorry.
She
Seatbelts,
just stood up
everyone,
like
now!
the rules didn't apply anymore. The aircraft wobbled, the floor tilted, and still her balance didn't change.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a
Her
situation.
body adjusted to every
Please
sway
remain
like she had
calm and
practiced
follow
on
my
moving ground her
instructions
whole
carefully.
life. The young guy beside her snapped his head up, panic finally breaking through his fake calm. "Lady, what are you doing? Sit down, there's literally a fire." She turned and looked at him properly for the first time. Not a casual glance, a direct look that made him go quiet. "What's your name?" she asked, steady. He swallowed. "Evan." "Evan," she said, like she was locking it into place, "listen carefully, when we land, and we will land, you're going to help people out through the rear exit." He stared like she'd spoken another language. "Why me?" he breathed. "Because you're young, you're strong, and you're sitting in the right spot," she said, "and when people panic, they follow whoever looks calm, you understand." His mouth opened, no words came out. She leaned in slightly, not threatening, just certain. "Do you understand?" "Yeah," he finally forced out, "yes." "Good," she said, then nodded toward the window seat where his girlfriend was half asleep, headphones crooked, unaware the world had changed. "Wake her up, tell her the same thing, both of you stay calm, and you guide people away from the aircraft, no pushing, no screaming, you move them like a line, can you do that?" He blinked hard, fear mixing with something else now, responsibility. "I think so," he said. "Don't think," she replied, "promise." "I promise."
Sir, seatbelt on now.
She moved
Okay,
into
doing
the
it.
aisle,
Ma'am, you too.
heading
Fasten
forward.
it. Yes, sorry.
And
Seatbelts,
that same
everyone,
flight
now.
attendant unbuckled and stepped out to block her. "Ma'am, I can't let you walk around, it's not safe,
Ladies
you
and
need to get
gentlemen,
back
we
to
have
your
a
seat right
situation.
now," he said,
Please remain
trying to
calm
sound in
and follow
control.
my instructions
The
carefully.
plane dropped for half a heartbeat, just enough to make him grab a seat back. His shoes slid, his face flashed white. She didn't even sway. When the aircraft steadied again, she was standing right in front of him, close enough that he could see her eyes clearly. They weren't wide, they weren't frantic. They were focused, like a person staring at a target. "What's your name?" she asked. He hesitated. "Jordan." "Jordan," she said, "your pilots are dealing with major hydraulic loss and a dead engine, their control response is slowing down, and if they don't make the right adjustments soon, this aircraft will stop responding altogether." Jordan blinked, stunned. "How do you even know that?" "Because I can feel it in the floor and hear it in the engines," she said, "and because I know what a failing control system sounds like." She nodded toward the cockpit door up front. "I need you to let me in there." Jordan's eyes widened like she'd asked him to open the emergency door mid-flight. "I can't do that," he said fast, "that's locked for a reason, that's federal, that's my job, I could be arrested." Another violent tremor ran through the aircraft, harsher than before. A ceiling panel near the middle rows popped loose and dangled by wires. And then oxygen masks dropped in a cluster, swinging in front of shocked faces like the cabin had suddenly grown claws. People screamed again, the sound turning sharp and helpless.
Sir, seatbelt
Jordan
on
looked
now.
back at her,
Okay, doing
his
it.
confidence
Ma'am, you too.
cracking.
Fasten it. Yes, sorry.
She kept her
Seatbelts,
voice
everyone,
low,
now.
forcing him to listen. "Jordan, if you keep following the rulebook, everyone here dies according to the rulebook."
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a
"I'm
situation.
not guessing," she said,
Please remain
"I'm not a
calm
nervous
and follow my
passenger, I'm
instructions
telling you what is
carefully.
happening, and I'm telling you what comes next. In 10 minutes, you will have chaos you cannot control, unless the pilots get help now." Jordan swallowed, eyes flicking toward the cockpit door, then back to the terrified passengers. "I could lose everything," he whispered. "If this goes bad, none of that will matter," she replied, "because you won't be here to lose it." He stared at her like he was trying to measure her. Trying to decide if she was insane or exactly what this flight needed. And something in her calm, not bravado, not panic, just certainty, reached past every protocol he had ever memorized. He stepped aside. Not fully agreeing, not fully understanding. But making room. She walked toward the cockpit door with 3 deliberate steps. And raised her knuckles to knock, not politely, not timidly. Like someone who belonged on the other side of that door. The cockpit looked like a Christmas tree that had caught fire, alarms stacking, amber lights blinking, warning tones cutting through the air so fast the pilots could barely finish one checklist before the next problem shouted over it. Captain Mason Hale gripped the controls with both hands, but the aircraft didn't feel like an airplane anymore. It felt like a giant shopping cart with one broken wheel, turning late, responding slow, fighting him on every correction. Control response is degrading, his first officer, Nina Park, called out, voice steady even while her fingers trembled. We're dropping
Sir,
faster than
seatbelt
we
on
should.
now!
Okay, doing it.
Mason
Ma'am, you too,
forced the
fasten
nose
it.
up,
Yes, sorry.
and the jet
Seatbelts,
answered him like
everyone,
it was
now!
thinking about it first, a thick delay that made his stomach twist, because delays in the sky don't forgive. He
Ladies
reached
and
for the
gentlemen, we
radio.
have a situation.
Center, we are declaring
Please
an
remain
emergency.
calm and
We need
follow my
immediate
instructions
vectors to the
carefully.
nearest suitable field. Then the aircraft groaned again, a deep grinding sound that both pilots felt through their seats, and Nina snapped her eyes to the engine page. Engine 2 is shut down and secured, she said. Engine 1 temp is climbing, vibration is climbing too. Mason swallowed. If we lose the last engine and the hydraulics keep bleeding out, we're flying with prayers. A hard knock slammed against the cockpit door, 3 sharp hits like a command, not a request. Mason barked without looking, not now. The intercom crackled, and the flight attendant's voice came through, tight and urgent. Captain, I have a passenger insisting she can help, she's saying she knows what's failing. Mason's jaw clenched. Tell her to sit down. Before the attendant could answer, a woman's voice came through the intercom, calm, clear, and so technical it made the cockpit go silent for one heartbeat. Captain, you're losing hydraulic control because your backup flow is being contaminated through a compromised feed line, she said. Your control lag isn't just damage, it's the system fighting itself. Nina stared at the speaker like it had grown teeth. The voice continued, still flat, still precise. You need to close the bypass valve for System 2 right now, the one feeding the alternate control path, she said. If you don't isolate it in the next few minutes, you'll lose pitch authority completely. Mason's eyes flicked to Nina, because everything the voice just said matched what they were seeing, but no normal passenger
Sir,
would know
seatbelt
those
on
words.
now!
Okay,
no
doing
normal
it.
Ma'am,
passenger
you too,
would name
fasten
that
it.
part.
Yes, sorry. Seatbelts,
Who is
everyone,
this?
now!
Nina whispered. Mason didn't answer. He made the only decision that mattered. Open the door,
Ladies and
he
gentlemen,
said.
we have a situation.
Nina froze.
Please remain
Captain.
calm and follow my instructions
Open it,
carefully.
Mason repeated, voice sharp. We can argue on the ground or we can die in the air. The lock released with a heavy click, and the cockpit door swung open. She stepped in like she belonged there, plain clothes, practical hair, nothing dramatic, but her eyes moved fast, sweeping the panels, reading the numbers like she was reading a map. Mason snapped, who are you? She didn't look at him yet. She pointed at a switch on the overhead panel without hesitation. Close that bypass valve now, she said. Do it. Nina looked at Mason. Mason looked at the woman, then back at the instruments, and he trusted what he saw more than his fear. He flipped the switch. For a moment nothing changed. Alarms still blared, the aircraft still felt heavy. Then the controls softened, the lag shrank, the yoke stopped feeling like it was fighting him from the inside. Mason's eyes widened. It's responding. Because it's not arguing with itself anymore, the woman said, already leaning toward the engine display. Now you keep the last engine alive. Nina said, standard procedure is to increase thrust to maintain altitude. Standard procedure assumes normal failure, the woman replied. This isn't normal. She pointed again. Set thrust to 62%, increase fuel flow slightly. You're stabilizing a compressor vibration before it becomes a stall. Nina hesitated. That's not in any checklist. It will be in your accident report if you don't, the woman said.
Sir, seatbelt
not
on
cruel,
now!
just
Okay,
honest.
doing it.
Ma'am, you too, fasten
Mason
it. Yes,
nodded
sorry.
once.
Seatbelts,
Do it.
everyone, now!
Nina adjusted the controls, thrust down, fuel flow up. The engine temperature climbed for
Ladies
a terrifying
and gentlemen, we have a
second, then
situation.
stopped, then
Please
eased
remain
down,
calm
the
and follow
vibration
my
smoothing out
instructions
like
carefully.
a fist unclenching. Nina breathed out. It worked. Mason stared at the woman, voice lower now. How do you know how to do that? We don't have time for my biography, she said, then pointed to the navigation display. You're aiming for a civilian airport, change it. Mason frowned. That was the closest option. Not the best option, she replied. You need a long runway, heavy rescue equipment, foam, and a secured approach. divert to the military field nearby, it's closer and better prepared. Nina blinked. How do you know what they have? The woman didn't answer the question, she just pressed forward like momentum itself. Call it in now, she said, tell them you're inbound with degraded flight controls, one engine, hydraulic loss, coming in heavy. Mason keyed the radio. Center, we need immediate diversion to the military base runway, emergency authority, we cannot wait for coordination. A controller started to respond with hesitation, rules and permissions and procedure. The woman leaned in and took the mic with a steady hand, and when she spoke her tone changed, still calm, but now it carried command, the kind of voice that doesn't negotiate with emergencies. Denver Center, we are exercising emergency authority, we are diverting now, notify base operations, clear the airspace, we require full emergency response on both sides of the runway, acknowledge. There was a pause on the frequency, the kind of pause that happens when someone on the other end suddenly realizes the person speaking isn't guessing.
Ma'am, you too, fasten it. Yes,
Then
sorry.
the reply
Seatbelts,
came,
everyone,
quicker,
now!
sharper, copy, cleared direct, altitude at your discretion, emergency services notified.
Ladies and gentlemen,
The
we
woman
have a
handed the mic
situation.
back to Mason
Please
like it was
remain
just
calm
another
and
tool.
follow my instructions
We're not
carefully.
done, she said, eyes back on the instruments, but now we have a chance. She reached up and tuned the second radio without asking, fingers moving like she'd done it 1,000 times. Then she keyed the mic and spoke into the military guard frequency, the channel every fighter pilot listens to, the channel you use when seconds matter more than permission. Tower, this is civilian flight Falcon 731 declaring Mayday on guard, we are a commercial A320, one engine down, hydraulics failing, flight controls degraded, we are inbound and losing performance, we need immediate priority landing, full crash response, foam trucks, medical teams, everything you've got, how copy? The reply came back fast, crisp, professional. Falcon 731, we read you loud and clear, we have you on radar, emergency vehicles are rolling now, airspace is being cleared, be advised we have 2 Raptors training nearby, we are recalling them for visual escort, confirm souls on board and fuel state. Mason answered, 189 souls, fuel dumping but still heavy. Copy 189, hold course, help is coming. A few seconds later, a new voice cut in, young, confident, a fighter pilot's calm that sounds like nothing can touch them. Falcon 731, Raptor flight is on your 4 miles back, we're sliding up for a visual, you're not alone. Outside the cockpit windows, the first gray fighter appeared like a blade, then the second, both easing into position on either side of the airliner,
Ma'am, you too,
close
fasten
enough
it.
to see,
Yes, sorry.
far enough
Seatbelts,
to
everyone,
avoid wake.
now!
The contrast was unreal, 2 predatory jets built for war escorting a wounded passenger plane that was barely holding itself together. Falcon 731, Raptor 11, we're assessing exterior now. Mason swallowed and answered, any visible damage, report anything you see. Copy. The fighters moved slightly, scanning, circling with practiced precision, then the lead pilot spoke again, voice sharpened. Falcon 731, we've got scoring and torn panels around your right engine cowling, looks like debris ingestion or multiple impacts, also seeing fluid streaking under the belly aft of the wing, definitely hydraulic, no active flame, no smoke trail. Nina stared at the screen, multiple impacts, she whispered. Before Mason could respond, the woman leaned in and keyed the mic herself, and her voice changed. Still quiet, still controlled, but now it carried that clipped certainty that fighter pilots recognize immediately. Raptor 11, confirm the scoring pattern, is it uniform like an internal failure, or scattered like foreign object strikes? There was a pause on the frequency, a short one, but it was loud in its own way. Falcon, who is speaking, the fighter pilot asked, cautious now. System specialist in the cockpit, she replied, answer the question. Another pause, then, scattered, multiple points, different sizes, looks like the intake 8 debris. Copy, she said, scattered means external causation, not a single component shedding apart, that changes the risk to the remaining engine. The fighter pilot didn't laugh, didn't argue, he just replied with a tone that held a new kind of respect.
Ma'am, you too, fasten it. Yes,
Roger,
sorry. Seatbelts, everyone, now!
Good catch, we'll stay with you all the way down. Inside the lead fighter, the pilot and his backseater exchanged a look, because civilians didn't talk like that, and system specialist wasn't supposed to sound like a mission brief. The backseater quietly routed her transmission through a voice match system meant for combat identification. It took seconds. Then his blood ran cold. "Boss," he said, voice tight, "we've got a match, 90+%. "What match?" the pilot snapped, still flying formation. "A classified profile," the backseater answered, "call sign Reaper 6. The pilot's grip tightened. "That's impossible, she's listed Kia. It's flagged deceased, but the match is screaming high confidence." The pilot didn't take his eyes off the airliner, but his tone changed, lower, urgent. He switched to a secure channel and made a flash call to base operations, asking for the commander immediately, no details on an open net. When the base commander answered, the pilot gave the report in one breath, escorting an emergency civilian. Unknown specialist voice matches a deceased special ops asset, call sign Reaper 6, advise quiet security, no public scene. There was silence on the line, then the commander's voice, sharp with disbelief and calculation. "Priority 1 is the landing, do not spook the cockpit, get them down first, then we identify quietly." Back in the airliner's cockpit, none of that was visible, only the runway ahead and the clock ticking down. Nina called out, 15 miles. The woman leaned forward, eyes locked on the approach number.
Sir, seatbelt on now!
"Start your turn early,"
Ma'am, you
she
too,
said.
fasten it.
"Your
Yes,
hydraulics
sorry.
are lagging.
Seatbelts, everyone,
If you
now!"
wait for the normal point you'll overshoot and you won't have the authority to correct." Mason frowned, "How early?"
Ladies and gentlemen,
3
we have a
miles early,
situation.
she replied,
Please remain
"Bank no
calm
more than
and follow
15
my
degrees,
instructions
let it
carefully."
drift into the turn, don't force it." The runway lights appeared in the dusk like a lifeline, emergency vehicles lined up along both sides, red and white flashes painting the air. 10 miles, Nina said, "we're stable but still heavy." "Good," the woman answered, "stay slightly high, you can lose altitude faster than you can regain it, high gives you choices." Mason nodded, hands steady now, not because the fear was gone, but because he had something stronger than fear, a plan. At 6 miles, Nina asked, "Gear?" "Not yet," the woman snapped, "you may only get one clean extension, wait until 5 miles, closer, when you're committed." At 5 miles, she said, "Now, gear down." Mason pulled the lever, and time slowed. 1 green light. 2 green lights. The third took too long. Nina held her breath. Then finally, the third light clicked on, gear down and locked. "Commit," the woman said, "no go around, you won't have the control authority for it." 1 mile, Nina called, voice almost a whisper. The runway filled the windshield, concrete and lights and the promise of stopping. "Keep speed," the woman warned, "do not chase perfect numbers, land a little hot if you have to, a stall kills faster than a hard landing." Mason answered through clenched teeth, "Understood." 500 feet, Nina said.
"Sir, seatbelt on now!"
The woman braced a hand on
Ma'am,
the
you
back
too,
of
fasten
Mason's
it.
seat,
Yes, sorry.
not for
Seatbelts,
comfort,
everyone,
for
now!
physics. "Fly it all the way down," she said softly, "don't quit on the last seconds."
Ladies
200.
and gentlemen, we have a situation.
100.
Please remain calm
Flare.
and follow my instructions
Mason pulled
carefully.
back, the response lagged, then the aircraft dropped onto the runway with a brutal slam, the kind of landing that makes teeth click and heart stop. The cabin behind them erupted in screams and sobs, but the wheels were on the ground. Mason threw spoilers, reversers, but only one side answered, and the plane tried to yaw hard, dragging toward the edge like it wanted to run off the concrete. He fought it with rudder, the pedals felt wrong, delayed, heavy. Nina shouted, "We're drifting." "Hold it," the woman barked, "small corrections, don't overcorrect, let it settle." The runway disappeared beneath them fast, foam trucks racing alongside, lights flashing. 8,000 feet used. 9. 10. Mason pressed manual brakes, feeling the anti-skid pulse, the aircraft shaking. 11,000 feet. 12. Nina whispered, "Stop, come on." Then the speed finally bled away, 40 knots, 20, 10. The aircraft rolled to a halt with only a sliver of runway left. For a few seconds nobody spoke, alarms still screaming, but every alarm now sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. They were down. They were alive. And outside, the two Raptors stayed in position a moment longer than necessary, watching that cockpit like they were staring at a ghost. The moment the wheels stopped turning, the cabin didn't turn calm, it turned
Sir,
chaotic.
seatbelt on now!
Okay, doing
Doors
it.
popped,
Ma'am, you too,
slides
fasten it.
blasted
Yes, sorry.
open with that
Seatbelts,
explosive
everyone,
thump,
now!
and the air filled with shouting, crying, coughing, and the sharp smell of overheated brakes and spilled fear.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Leave
we have a
everything,
situation.
flight attendants
Please
yelled,
remain calm
voices
and
cracking
follow
under
my
the strain,
instructions
move,
carefully.
move, move. Passengers poured out like water from a broken container, some slipping, some frozen at the top of the slides, some clutching strangers as if they'd been family their whole lives. At the bottom, responders grabbed people by the arms and pulled them away, guiding them toward buses and triage lines under harsh floodlights. And just like she promised, the young guy from row 24 was there, braced at the rear exit with his girlfriend beside him. Both of them wide-eyed and terrified, but doing the job anyway. Catching people who landed hard, steadying those who stumbled, waving the next ones forward. Because panic spreads fast, but calm spreads too. Inside the cockpit, Mason finally looked back, ready to thank the woman, ready to demand answers, ready to at least get a name. But the seat behind him was empty. Nina blinked, where did she go? Mason yanked open the cockpit door, shouting toward the aisle, Jordan, where's the passenger who was up here? The flight attendant's voice came back through the noise, Captain, I don't see her, she must have gone back during the rollout. Mason felt a cold irritation cut through the adrenaline, because disappearing in a moment like this takes planning. Normal people don't vanish during evacuation, normal people cling to the nearest authority and beg for reassurance. Outside, base security had formed a quiet perimeter beyond the flashing emergency trucks. Not aggressive, not obvious, just a line of uniforms and radios
Okay,
watching faces as people poured out, scanning for one person in particular. A senior officer stood near a command vehicle, eyes locked on the stream of survivors.
Ladies and gentlemen,
Watching like she already knew the ending was missing a piece. Then, inside the aircraft, investigators began their first sweep. Empty seats, scattered blankets, phones left behind, shoes, a child's toy, the little leftovers of panic. In row 24E, a paperback lay open on the cushion, like the reader had simply stood up mid-sentence and never returned. And beside it, placed neatly on the seat as if there had been time to think, was a folded napkin. An inspector lifted it carefully and unfolded it. The handwriting was clean, controlled, too calm for an emergency. It wasn't a goodbye. It was a warning. It listed parts to examine, a specific assembly near the tail, hydraulic lines, evidence patterns. It suggested the failure wasn't random wear, but induced, engineered. It hinted at tiny charges, resonance points, and a method designed to look like a mechanical breakdown. And it ended with a simple message that made the inspector's throat go dry. This wasn't an accident, someone tried to bring this plane down. The inspector didn't waste time, he called for security, handed it off like it was live ammunition, and within minutes the note was on its way to the command vehicle. Meanwhile, in a temporary hangar turned into a processing room, Mason and Nina sat under bright lights giving statements. Both of them still shaking, still hearing alarms in their bones. An investigator asked the same question 3 times, because he didn't want to believe the answer. You're telling me a passenger identified the failure chain before your instruments confirmed it?
Yes, sorry.
Mason
Seatbelts,
nodded.
everyone, now!
She did, she named components, she gave fixes that worked, she coached the approach. Nina swallowed hard, she spoke like military, not like a hobbyist, not like a nervous flyer, like someone trained. A woman in a dark suit stepped closer, the kind of person who doesn't introduce herself unless she has to. Her badge was shown quickly, too quickly. I need you to think carefully, she said, voice even, did that passenger use any call sign on the radio, any designation at all? Mason rubbed his face, searching through the noise in his memory. I heard something when she talked to the fighters, he said slowly, I didn't catch it at first. Nina snapped her fingers like the sound finally clicked into place. Reaper 6, she said, that's what she said, Reaper 6. The suited woman didn't react much, but her posture tightened in a way that said everything. She stepped away and made a phone call to a number nobody else could see. When the line connected, she didn't waste words. It's confirmed, she said quietly, the call sign was used, she was here, she's gone now. A pause, then her face hardened. Yes, sir, she said, we'll find her. She lowered her voice even more, and what she said next sounded less like an order and more like a threat dressed as policy. She doesn't get to disappear again, not after this, dead people don't get to refuse. 3 hours after the crash landing, while fire crews were still checking heat-soaked brakes and investigators were crawling under the belly of the aircraft with flashlights. A woman stepped up to a rental counter in a nearby city like it was any normal night. Her
Sir,
ID
seatbelt
showed
on
a
now.
harmless name,
Okay, doing it.
the kind
Ma'am,
of
you
name
too,
you
fasten
forget
it.
the moment
Yes,
you
sorry.
read it.
Seatbelts, everyone,
Her
now!
hair was still tied back, her jacket still plain, her voice still quiet. The clerk scanned her
Ladies and
license,
gentlemen,
ran
we
her
have a
card,
situation.
and slid a set of
Please
keys
remain
across the
calm
counter
and follow
without
my
looking
instructions
twice.
carefully.
Drive safe, he said automatically. Thank you, she replied, just as automatic. Minutes later she was on the highway, taillights stretching ahead like a tunnel. Driving away from sirens, away from questions, away from cameras. Away from the moment she saved a plane full of strangers and accidentally stepped back into a life she had tried to bury. Because she hadn't only disappeared once. She had been erased. Months earlier, when the world believed she died, it wasn't because she lost a fight. It was because someone needed a body to blame. A mission overseas had gone wrong after it went right. The operation succeeded, but the aftermath turned into a massacre. A safe location was compromised, people she respected were killed, and the story that followed needed a villain more than it needed the truth. So they offered her a choice in a room with no soft edges. Take the blame quietly and vanish, or fight it and be crushed under paperwork, false evidence, and a sentence that would lock her away for decades. No public defense, no fair hearing, just a clean, slow death behind bars. She chose the third door. The one that looked like surrender but was really survival. A staged, training accident, in the desert. A closed casket. A salute. A burial that was more theater than grief. And a new identity handed to her like a leash. Disappear.
Sir,
Stay quiet.
seatbelts on now!
Okay, doing
Never
it.
use
Ma'am,
your
you
real
too,
name
fasten
again.
it. Yes, sorry.
For a
Seatbelts,
while,
everyone, now!
she tried. She tried to be ordinary, to eat normal meals, to sleep without radios in her dreams.
Ladies and gentlemen, we
To
have
read
a situation.
paperbacks and pretend the
Please
world
remain
didn't run
calm
on
and
threats.
follow my instructions
Then
carefully.
someone tried to kill 189 innocent people using a method she recognized. A method tied to an old enemy she thought had been finished. Which meant either the threat was never gone, or someone with access to secrets had revived it. Either way, the next plane might not get lucky. She drove for hours until she reached a truck stop outside a quiet stretch of road. The kind of place where no one stares because everyone is too busy surviving their own life. In the restroom, she stood beneath a humming fluorescent light and reached up into the drop ceiling. Her fingers found what she had hidden there months earlier. A sealed bag, weatherproof, taped and tucked like a promise. Inside was a burner phone, cash, and a single number written on a folded strip of paper. A number she had prayed she would never need again. She dialed. It rang, once, twice, 3 times. Then a man answered with a voice that sounded like steel rubbed raw. "Who is this?" he demanded, not friendly, not curious, careful like someone who doesn't believe in miracles. She didn't give her new name. She gave him a phrase only one person alive would recognize, a small memory wrapped in code. The line went silent. Then his breath changed, like the past had just walked into the room. "That's not possible," he said, low. "I know," she replied, "but here we are." "You're supposed to be dead," he said,
Sir,
and the anger in
seatbelts
his
on
voice
now!
sounded
Okay,
like
doing
grief
it.
that
Ma'am,
never
you
got a
too,
real
fasten it.
ending.
Yes, sorry.
"You
Seatbelts,
went to a
everyone,
show,"
now!
she answered, "I need you now." Another long pause. Then, where, he
Ladies and
asked.
gentlemen, we have a situation.
Remember the place we talked
Please
about
remain calm and
consequences,
follow
she
my
said.
instructions carefully.
I remember, he replied, voice tight. 2 hours, she said, come alone. She ended the call before he could ask the questions that would break them both. Outside, cold air hit her face as she stepped back into the night. She stood for a moment beside the car, looking up at the dark sky that had almost swallowed a plane. And she didn't look like a hero, or a legend, or a ghost. She just looked tired. But her eyes were different now. Focused again. Alive again. Because she understood something she didn't want to admit. Some threats don't die when you bury them. Some enemies don't stop when you turn away. And some ghosts, no matter how deep you put them in the ground, refuse to stay buried.